This is Chiming In. So the heckling, how did that come about?
I'm not sure how the heckling come about, mate, but I ended up with a whole lot of different names. They reckon I ran like a horse and they called me Luskin Star. And then they called me the Cougar because I had a mow and all that sort of thing.
You're basically a first responder, aren't you? You've got to go out and see how badly someone might be hurt or concussed or whatever.
Probably the worst example that I could give you was we broke his neck. Consequently, if he had have had one more collision, he wouldn't be able to walk anymore. Little did I know he had been that furious, he'd thrown the walkie-talkie on the ground. It was busted, so all communication was finished. And I said to Shawnee Garlic, Shawnee, Gus said, get him off now. The referee's a cheat.
So you're a first responder, a coach, a trainer, a friend.
I probably deserved more money, didn't I?
The most popular and best known and skillful strength and conditioning coach in the history of rugby league, Ron Palmer. Welcome to Chiming In.
Thank you, Chimes, into chiming in, and I think you're a damn fine judge too, mate.
Ronnie, great to see you. We've got a lot to get through. It's been a journey. How many years have you been a strength and conditioning coach for?
I started in 1987 with Arthur Beetson and went through right until the end of 23 when I was moved on from the Tigers.
And just define for us what a strength and conditioning coach is.
Okay, it's changed its role a lot, only because the strength and conditioning coach now can do a lot more because it's got a lot more time. But having said that, the head strength and conditioning coach now has a lot of assistance, so you've got people to do different facets of the fitness that they need to do.
So, mate, when your journey stopped at the Tigers at the end of 2023, I guess 2024 was a gap year for you, and here we are at the beginning of 2025. How have you coped without being involved at that level for that 12-month period?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, mate, because since 1971 when I played with the Tigers, I have got up every day and gone to training and done some sort of rugby league. And again, you experience that sense of loss. And I often thought through all of last year when, you have to try and get up top, because that's always been my go. Positive, stay up, motivate other people, but you had to motivate yourself. And it's an interesting thing. I thought I might try and sit down and write something and get it together for all those people, because it is a hell of a downtime when you've been at a job for so long and it deserts you. It's a trying time.
So you could probably compare it to a footballer retiring after 15 years at the top, and there's that transition period, which is incredibly tough for some.
100%. And as we know, lots of them don't cope at all.
So how'd you get through? What drives you first thing in the morning?
I just make sure I get up with a positive attitude, do my affirmations in front of the mirror, looking at myself.
Tell us about your affirmations.
I've done these affirmations before, but I'll tell you anyway.
Yeah.
My affirmations is I look in the mirror while I'm, and I usually do it with either sunscreen or my moisturiser, and I say to myself that, here we go, rub my hands together, put it through, I'm strong, I'm powerful, I'm a winner, I can do anything. That's the first affirmation. So I'm strong, I'm powerful, I'm a winner, I can do anything. The second affirmation is to realise or confirm and affirm to myself that I should be loving people, give out not love and you'll get it back. So I say love and attitude, love and attitude, love and attitude. And that's about what I do. So I front the mirror and do that. Yeah.
So is that self-taught?
Yes, it is, mate. It is self-taught. But I got to admit that I did, we were on a holiday once in Thailand and we went to a couple of morning sessions, and this fellow was talking about the nerve endings there and around your ears, that they get stimulated, and when you run your hands through your hair and get that little stimulation tingle at the back of your neck, it alerts you to what you're doing.
So I mentioned you're a long-serving strength and conditioning coach. Those sorts of methods and things might not have been around when you kicked off.
They certainly weren't, mate. But it was, as you say, it's I borrowed a bit from someone I saw overseas. But I just felt that it gives you a good start to your day. It's exactly like when you walk into a place. I've always said to the players, there's nothing down there. There's nothing down there to find. There's nothing's going to do any good down there. You got to have your head up, engage with people, walk into the place, have eye contact, say hello, and then everybody knows that you're on for the day. Nothing worse to see someone walk in and their head's down, and they're not here to do their job.
So, Ron, you had a career in the NRL. You played at the Balmain Football Club,
Yes.
NRL, over 5 seasons, I think, in the early 70s.
Yep.
25 appearances in the NRL, and they were sort of scattered over that time. There wasn't one season where you dominated position in the team. What do you think the reasoning was why your career over that 5-year period was spaced?
That's a good question, James. And I'm still. The funny part about it is I'd played all my junior rugby league in the Balmain district, and I played up to the age of about 16. And the high school that I went to was a rugby union school. Consequently, in the senior years at the high school there, I played rugby union, and rugby league fell away a bit. So when I left high school, I went up to Eastwood Rugby Union and just thought I'd go up there and have a bit of a game. And mate and I went up there, and on the first day we went from 6th grade to 2nd grade. They just keep you and shuffle you along. And the coach at first grade said, we'd like you to come and join us. So I ended up playing with Eastwood that year, Eastwood Rugby Union. And then when I went to the Tigers, it was all new to me. I sort of got in the back door because most of the junior kids had to play President's Cup and all those rep sides, but I got straight in. On the first day there, I was playing trials in 1st grade on the first appearance there. But then when I got into the team, I was a centre then. And I was blessed because I was playing with a fellow called Jeff Starling. I don't know if anyone remembers him. But he was the youngest, I think, in national at the time. Mm. So that was my best season. I had, and Leo Nosworthy, the great coach who had them in 69, he had been in the team for 9 games. I was there for 9 games straight. And that's the best I ever did.
Yeah.
And then every other season, it was bits and pieces, you know.
So they won the comp in 69, so they're a fairly strong unit.
They were a strong unit. And he was a great coach. There were some great characters then. I went in as a wide-eyed kid coming from rugby union and absolutely loved it.
Rattle off some of the names of some of the legends that you played with.
In that team?
Yeah.
There was Barry McTaggart, Gary Leo, Chicka Outen, Dennis Tuddy, Johnny Spencer, and all the Bobby Smithies, the fullback, Lenny Colleen, the South African goal-kicking winger. So there was most of those fellas actually played in the 69 grand final.
So a good career in rugby league, and then you switch to strength and conditioning. You go back to junior league after your NRL career. What club and for how long?
I was played mainly with Ryde RSL and North Ryde. So they were the 2 teams I played as a junior. Started like most kids. I was a 5-year-old. And I think that was with North Ryde, and then when I went to Ryde RSL.
So you're a PE teacher.
Yeah.
That was your day job, and league was your second job. And then you decided to get into strength and conditioning. How did that happen? And where did you start?
Well, I guess the main thing was that I was pretty late into getting into the senior ranks of rugby league. But what I did from the very beginning, I had a PE background, which made me qualified to be able to do most of that sort of stuff. But I was 37 years of age when I was asked to go to the Roosters with Arthur Beetson, and that's essentially where it all got underway.
You knew Arthur from your early Tigers days, I suppose. How did the conversation go? Did they advertise for the job, or did someone ring you and say, get over here for an interview?
Yeah, no, I was lucky on that again. I've been blessed the whole way through, to be honest. But I was doing a master's degree at Sydney Uni with a fellow called Bob Sheens, who is Tim's brother. And he said to me, Ron, I've got a job for you. And I said, yeah, where at, mate? And he said, at the Roosters. And I said, uh-huh. And at the time, I had 4 kids. I was teaching full-time at Holy Cross at Ryde. I was doing the odd aerobic class at the night time. And I said, I can't do it. I haven't got the time. And studying to do my masters. And he said, let's just go and have a yarn to Arthur and Russ Fairfax and Ron Jones. So I went down to down deep into the bowels of the old eastern suburbs Leagues Club and had a yarn to them. And long story short, they convinced me to do the job. And in those days, it was only Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday play.
So you're the head coach of strength and conditioning at the club.
Yep.
And you're there 2 evenings a week and game day.
That was it. But we were part-time then, don't forget, in 87.
Yep.
Because the first of the full-timers didn't start until about 88, 89. And that was Canberra, closely followed by the Broncos.
So, gee, you would have seen some changes from then to now. I mean, the facilities that these guys train in and house in and sports science and technology must have blown your mind, along the way.
Yeah, it's in evidence now, mate. If we got an exciting weekend coming up with footy in Vegas, but just to look at the quality of players now getting around, their athleticism, they're all well educated now. Their diets are in place. Everything's in place. And the other thing that is amazing now is to watch the women's game. I mean, they are now unbelievable. I was lucky enough in my last year at the Tigers to help Brett Camorley with their women's team, and it was an eye-opener. They were just so good. All they wanted to do was learn. All they wanted to do was get better, and so easy to work with. And I think that it's a revelation when they see the girls playing in Vegas this week. That game is just going to keep going higher and higher.
So along your journey, you became a bit of a cult hero. Everyone, even the fans, got to know who Ronnie Palmer was. Why do you think that was? How did you make a name for yourself?
That's, to be honest with you, mate, it's a complete mystery. I remember back in my old days when I was at the Tigers. I don't know if you remember a fellow called Laurie Nichols. Laurie was in the middle of winter, would be out there in his singlet cheering the Tigers on and doing his bit. But he had a nickname for everybody in the team. And my nickname was Ronnie Palmer, the Balmain Charmer. And I was called Charmer for a long time, but then when I went into training, I have no idea, mate. I don't have no idea. Johnny Peard used to bag me about my short shorts and all that sort of stuff.
I was going to ask you about your short shorts. Were they too short? Were you comfortable with them?
Not for the time. I was very comfortable. But for the time, they were just footy shorts, that people were wearing.
Yeah. The fans would heckle you, wouldn't they? Because you'd spend a lot of time on the field. Did the NRL ever pull you up for being on the field too long?
I think you might know what happened there, mate. But
share it with me.
What happened was there was a number of fines because Gus insisted that I get on the field, because you're allowed to in those days. And you could almost direct traffic.
Could you stand in the defensive line or you had to be behind the defensive line? You
could just behind them.
Yeah.
But to give the illusion that there may have been another defender there.
Right.
But what happened was they start out by saying, as you've just said, that you can go on any time you like. But as they got tired of trainers malingering on the field all the time, they changed the rules and all that sort of thing. But getting back to, what was the question you said before that, mate?
I can't remember. So the heckling, how did that come about?
I'm not sure how the heckling come about, mate, but I ended up with a whole lot of different names. They reckon I ran like a horse and they called me Luskin Star. And then they called me the Cougar because I had a mo and all that sort of thing. I think the banter was pretty playful. No one was ever serious about what they were saying.
So, mate, your job as a trainer at the time is you're basically a first responder, aren't you? You've got to go out and see how badly someone might be hurt or concussed or whatever. You must have seen some pretty horrific things in the middle of the battlefield.
100%, mate, because and even today, what they've got is a good backup now, because at every ground, not only do you have your qualified trainers, but you have your doctor from each club there, and you've also got 2 paramedics at the field, and that's compulsory now to have it. But probably the worst example that I could give you was I don't know if you remember a fellow called Phil Clark, the Pommy who came out and was playing. We were playing in a game up in North Queensland against the Cowboys, and he was as tough as all get out. And he ran the ball up, and I could see from the way he entered, he put his head down, it got crunched, and he went to the ground. And I got out to him, and I had a look at him, and I said, "You okay, mate?" And felt a few things, and he said, "Oh, I'm all right, Ronnie, I'm all right," and he got up. And I thought, no, you're coming off, mate. And he came off. And I think that was more good luck than good management, because we walked him around to the side, and Neil Halpin, the doctor at the time, said, "Sit down and have a rest for a while." And things after a while apparently didn't look so good, so the doc took him inside, and I don't know what look at this. So, cut a long story short, he broke his neck around the C2 mark, which is the hangman's mark, and it was like a cartwheel in 4 places. He broke it. Consequently, if he had have had one more collision, he wouldn't be able to walk anymore. So that was just sometimes it's luck, other times it's good management.
What about having to take blokes off to have them stitched up, head wounds and things like that? You would have seen plenty of them, mate.
Yeah, and another one, mate, which was, you probably remember a fella called Danny Shepherd from Queensland, big, tough fella. And he was a victim. I think he was taking it just a few too many things because he was crooked before the game. And what happened was, it was a terribly hot game, and he become dehydrated to the extent where he hit the ground and was out conscious. So we carried him off, and I went up to the dressing shed with Neil Halpin, and it was nip and tuck. We nearly lost a player that day because he had heat exhaustion and dehydration, the whole bit.
So you got to train these blokes. How do you know where to stop pushing the button, how hard you can push them, and exactly how much they can endure?
Yeah, well, that's probably, as we talk about training, it's more of an art than a skill. And you've got to get to know the type of people you're dealing with. You've got to get to know the fellas who will linger a bit. You've got to get to know the blokes who will just give everything they got every time. And what happens is, the expectations are that no one falls off. You don't drop off. Everyone stays together and does all the hard stuff. There's been a couple of times when I've noticed that someone has to have a break, and I'll just tap them and say, "Just have a rest for a while, mate."
Can you tell if a player's not on his game mentally, if he's got problems at home, or he's struggling with an addiction, or he's just not there? Can you pick that up?
Most of the time, yeah. Yep. Because, as I said to you, because you used to, particularly now in the environment of full-time, and Gus started full-time in 94, I think, with the Roosters. So you've got them lots. You've got them, almost 24/7 at your disposal. But you get to know the idiosyncrasies of each of them, the characteristics of them. Yep.
Is that something you were good at, putting your arm around them and having heart-to-hearts with them and trying to help them off the field?
Yeah. I think without being big-headed about it, I think that was a major forte of mine. Where what you got, again, it's an art and a science. You can go out there and do all the fancy training and all the things that you got to do, but there's more to it than that.
So you're a first responder, a coach, a trainer, a friend.
I probably deserve more money, didn't I?
So it's obviously a special type of person needs to do your role.
Yeah, I think it's a funny thing, mate, and this isn't talking derogatory in any sense, but what happened was the role that I was filling in those days was what is now the orange shirt. And the orange shirt is now a medical person. You've essentially got to be either a doctor or a physio or a registered nurse, but you can't just come off the blocks like me and do the job anymore as an orange shirt. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing or a good thing, but I think sometimes, to have the nous of a rugby league brain is sometimes helpful.
You would have seen players have to retire through injury. It must be heartbreaking for you.
Yeah, there's been quite a few actually. And I know the jury's out on this concussion bit, But it's a worrying thing at times.
So what's it like getting into a player when you've basically got to pick him up off the ground and check how he's going, the process? How does that work?
Well, the process these days is made reasonably simple. I mean, if a player goes to get up and stumbles, he's off straight away. If he doesn't get off in 15 seconds, he's off straight away, up in 15 seconds. But in the days when we were there, I probably have to put my hands up and just say there was probably times when I had to make an assessment and a judgment as to the person I was dealing with. A quick example for you was Robbie Farron in an Origin game. I got out to him and I could tell that he was in the hurt locker. But knowing the fellow and knowing what he was all about, I said, mate, are you able to go on? And as soon as he looked at me and said, yeah, then I made that assessment and said, get on.
It's a bit of a badge of honour, isn't it, for league players to show they're not hurt? Obviously, the rules are changing and they can no longer do that. But in your early days, you must have seen some guys that just refused to come off the field.
Well, yeah, mate. When I first started in '87, they were tough kids. You know, a lot of Queenslanders, Michael McLean, those sort of blokes who played for Queensland, and they were all workers. Don't forget, they'd go to work and come to training of an afternoon. And when they were playing footy, they loved their footy and they didn't want to come off. But then the reverse came around when it became unlimited. I don't know if you remember the unlimited tackle rule, which, by the way, cost us the grand final with Muzzer in 2000. And I don't think too many people know these statistics, but because it was unlimited interchange, the Broncos had 45 interchange. We had 14. And Muzz to the day used to say, you know, they used the rule better than us. But the thing that used to get to me about blokes who didn't want to come off, and that's what you should be. You shouldn't want to come off. If you're playing the game, you're there to play. You don't want to come off. But when it was unlimited interchange, you'd run out, blokes say, take me. Yeah. And that used to piss me off. Yeah. I used to hate to see blokes want to come off, you know.
Yeah. Mate, how's the training changed since you began to now? When you went to the Roosters for the first time, I'm sure you had a good idea what you were doing, but it's changed so much.
Yeah.
What sort of training did you implement when you first got there?
At the Roosters, it was we were at the old Henson Park, and there was a makeshift gym, which is one of those dressing sheds, which is a shoebox, and there was about 5 different weights, and that was it. And if they had time after work before training started, they'd do some weights. So that's all we could fit in their time frame. But when we go out in the field, it was pretty much give them plenty, you know, because you had them Tuesday night and Thursday night. That was it. Tuesday night would be the big night. Thursday night, not so big. And then they'd have to be ready to play on the weekend.
Road runs back in the old days?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Most people used to do the sand hills and the road runs in the off season.
The stairs. Yeah. That was all normal?
All normal, down the Coogee stairs. It was all part of it. And you know what? I don't think it hurts them. Yeah. I mean, even towards the end in the Tigers when I was there, we were doing the stairs at Coogee and a couple of hill runs and a couple of sand hill runs. It's not going to get you faster, fitter or stronger, but it's to take you to a dark place and make you work out of it. Would
those players do their own training on those nights other than Tuesday, Thursday?
Not many of them.
Right.
Because the typical time then was on a Tuesday we train, go down to the pub and have a beer after training. Thursday probably the same. It was just a different era then.
And you wouldn't be allowed to do that now, would you, go to the pub after training?
Oh, no.
No. So sports science, mate, how did that evolve and how good are you at sports science? How do you engross yourself in it?
Look, because I did so many... I was a late bloomer in going to become a teacher, and so therefore my studies were late. So when I did my qualification to be a teacher, I had to do sports science, which had a whole lot in it. Then when I wanted to get my degree in sports science, I had to do some more sports science. And when I did my master's in human movement, I had to do more sports science. So I was pretty au fait with most of the things that we needed to do. I've never been... I believe in it, but I think there's other ways around it sometimes, because there's no one can tell the fella out there when his lungs are burning, his head's throbbing, and he's got no gas left, that he can't go on. And the GPS will tell you that and red flag him, get him off. No, because the bloke who stays there and battles through it, he's the one who wins you the game.
So you can't measure courage, of course. How important is it to be courageous? Are some players braver than others?
Yeah, I think the number one determinant of making it in rugby league is that you're tough. You got to be tough, and then you got to be resilient. You got to you got to work hard, because the blokes who work hard make it. I've seen so many kids who are talented to the back teeth, but they don't get there. The kids who work hard, they'll get through. You got to just work through it.
I think anyone who steps across the white line to run onto the field's tough.
Oh yeah,
but some are tougher than others.
Oh yeah. There's been some tough fellas. I mean, you talk tough, and we've often said, who are the toughest. I mean, if I go way back, or even to Morley. Morley was probably Adrian Morley was one of the toughest fellas that ever played the game. But there was also tough fellas back in the early days when I started, Quentin Pongia, for one. I don't know if you remember him at all. There's been a lot of really tough fellas who have gone through.
What are some of your non-negotiables as a trainer with players?
Just do the best you can, and don't look for shortcuts. Because, as they say in the old classics, there's no shortcut to a place worth going. And if they want to get there, you can't have shortcuts. And you've got to be true to yourself. I know it's an old cliche again, but when you're doing your stuff and you say, am I doing it as hard as I can, as best I can? Take a look in the mirror, because he's the only bloke who will give you the answer. So that's what I try and make them accountable for themselves.
So, mate, if people are listening to us today and thinking about getting fitter or going on a bit of a health kick, what would be your number one advice to them?
Just move, because biological rust sets in as you're getting older. And you just I think my 4 pillars of health, I think that has taken me through, is that you've got to move daily, do something. Doesn't matter if it's resistance, doesn't matter if it's walk down the street. Doesn't matter if some people say park your car and walk to work 500 metres. If you add that up, there's a K there and back. It's better than nothing. So move, exercise, that's number one. Diet, you don't have to be Spartan. You can have your little treats every now and then. But you've got to have a sensible diet. Sleep's imperative. I think everybody knows that now. You've got to get your good sleep and quality sleep, not broken sleep. You've got to have quality sleep. But the number one thing I think, and everyone would probably put those other 3 at number one, but is to be happy. Because if you're happy, then you talk about what do you want to be, healthy or happy? If you're happy, then you're going to be healthy. But you don't necessarily be healthy and happy. And I've seen so many people who are healthy and they drive you mad about what they're doing. I did a run today and went here and they're not happy. They won't go and have a beer and enjoy themselves. So I think the essence and what happens is with happiness and feeling fulfilled and all that sort of stuff, the stress levels in your body drop. And I think, without being a medical person, I think the biggest worry and biggest killer in society is stress. Because if you're stressed, all those little things that are rolling around your body take hold, cancer and all that sort of stuff.
What about a tip or two about sleep health, mate? How can you sleep better?
Well, as the experts would recommend, and it's pretty true, you've got to try and go to bed roughly the same time. The number one thing is get up at the same time, because if you get up early every day, then your body should cumulatively be wanting to sleep in the evening. But my own personal thing, I just do deep breathing for probably 10 times. I mean, maximum inhalations, maximum exhalations.
Before you go to sleep?
Yep, as I'm laying on the pillow.
Yep.
And 90% of the time I'm gone before I get to the 10th. So, yeah, I just think you've got to relax your body. And if there's anything, which we all have worries. If the thing rolling around your head, just address it, live with it, talk to it. and then move on.
Do rugby league players have enough fun nowadays, or is it all a little bit too regimented? How do you feel about that?
Look, they still have fun, but it is regimented, and so it should be. I mean, they're now in an elite class, the players that are playing now, because everything is done for them. They're getting their lunches provided, they're getting good hotels, they're getting all this sort of stuff. So, but I think the fun element's still there. And what you need to do, and one of Freddie's big things when he has a coach, when he's coaching a side, he says to the players to bring your personality with you. Because another old favourite saying of mine is, why would you want to be somebody else when they're already taken? So you've got to bring your own personality to the table every time you're there. So therefore, that's when you need your characters within the group, and that keeps the fun element going.
What do you think about boot camps and army camps? Are you a fan of them?
I've been on a few of them myself, and look, you know what? Again, it's like doing your sandhills and like doing your stairs and all that. It's very good for team building. It's very good for your own personal satisfaction, because if you complete things, and some of the tasks are very onerous, but if you can complete them, then there's a bit of self-satisfaction involved there. I remember the toughest one that I think I ever went. There was been several tough ones, but Madge had one, and we went to Holsworthy, and the old trick, get them up at 1 o'clock in the morning. So you get up at 1 o'clock in the morning, and there was these 5-ton truck tanks, and we had 8 people allotted. I was on one of them, allotted to each of these tanks, and we had to push it 5 Ks. So we started at 1 in the morning, and it was no flats, all little inclines and flats every now and then. And that was just, that emptied you, and we didn't finish till 6 in the morning. It was 5 hours of just pushing this thing. But there's been other things equally as horrific, really.
So I guess there's a sense of achievement when they complete that.
100%.
And can you measure how mentally and physically strong they are at the same time? You can pick out the weaker one.
You said that's a perfect sounding board for the coach, because he sees
under pressure.
He sees people who start to rise. He sees people who start to fall. He sees people who start to whinge. He sees people who buck what's trying to go on, take the shortcuts. It's all revealed there.
So, mate, during your lengthy career, how many grand final appearances did you make, teams under your watch as head?
Yeah, we with the Roosters was our best run, and we had 4 grand finals in 5 years. First one with Buzz, and then 3 with Ricky. 1-1, which is still okay. But that's probably the most success I've had.
So would that be the highlight of your career, winning that grand final under your watch?
Yeah, I think that was, and I think if you talk to a lot of the elite players, they'll talk about wins for Australia, wins for the Origin are all, up there. But I think because you're with a team, a club team, and you're with them all year, and you've gone through so much adversity, and you've got the fan base there, which is your local hood, then it's a big thing for you to win a club premiership.
So, Ronnie, there's enormous pressure on teams to win, and there's the fan base and sponsors and members. Everyone wants their team to win. We often hear people say, "Oh, they're not fit. They're running third last because they're not fit." Their conversations from the sideline, because obviously those people aren't in the inner circle there. Are there teams? Have you seen teams that have tanked because they're not fit, or are they all pretty fit?
They're all pretty fit, mate. I think there's not much difference now between the type of training that we do, between the type of skill work they do with the footy, the type of planning they do for games. Look, it's all, I think, fairly generic without making light of it, but everyone knows what they're all familiar with the best forms of training, sprint work, strength work, the whole bit. But it's just about getting their head right, and it's like everything else. It's the head department that is still a major contributor to the whole thing.
I guess that's driven by people searching for answers why their team's not doing as well. What about a team like South Sydney at the moment that have had pretty rough trot with injuries pre-season, and there's Chinese whispers saying, "Oh, they must be doing something wrong with their training," and that is injuries a luck component of preparing a team?
Most of the time. And I think that what you said there, and I've seen it so often throughout the years that I've been doing this, that if you have a spate of hamstring injuries or a spate of groin injuries, or, all of a sudden they're training too hard and they're doing the wrong thing and they're lifting the wrong weights and all that sort of stuff. By and large, I think that it just doesn't happen. I think it's just a luck thing. And certainly with things like your hamstring and certainly with things like your ACL, I mean, if you have a look at a lot of the ACLs that have done, which puts you out for the season, some of them are non-contact, and people sort of say, how did you do that? Is it weakened by the type of training you're doing? Who knows?
So Souths have had 2 Achilles injuries in the last 12 months, Alex Johnson and Cam Murray. If they were to have another one, could you imagine what general public might suggest?
Yeah. And I get that because it's a very rare injury. And the third one would be, although I know for a fact they've changed strength and conditioning people over the last 2, there's a new one there. And Alex, when did Alex do his last year?
Yeah, last year.
Yeah, well, it was a different regime.
Yes, yeah. Mate, you've as I said, you've been around a long time. You've been involved in lots of highs and lots of lows and lots of funny incidents along the way. I guess we might have a chat about a few of them. The game at Brookvale where Phil Gould intimated he was going to take his team off the field. You were trainer at the time. You had to go out there and run some messages. Tell us about that day.
Yeah, that was one for the ages because we'd gone down to Brookie, all prepared to knock Manly off. I think they'd won 13 in a row or 11 in a row.
This is while you're at the Roosters, yeah.
Yeah, well, at the Roosters. And Gussie put us in the camp up there at the Manly Pacific, and we've got down there ready to go. Got out in the field, and as we got out there, the first 30 minutes, we're just getting pizzled by the referee. Everything's going against us. And the score was their way, everything was their way, and that wasn't the plan. We went down there to get the game. And all of a sudden on the walkie-talkie, sitting up in the stands with James Packer at the time, because James was on our board. So he's on, Ron, get down there now, tell Shawnee Garlic to get him off the field. I've gone, and as you said, you've got to be a filter, you've got to be everything when you go down. So and he started saying something else, and the next thing, there's no contact. So I thought, I'll go out. Little did I know he had been that furious, he'd thrown the walkie-talkie on the ground. It was busted, so all communication was finished. So I've run out. The referee's just in earshot, and I said to Shawnee Garlic, Shawnee, Gus said, get him off now. The referee's a cheat. And Shawnee said, I can't do that. I said, Gus wants you off now, mate. And I just sort of stood there for a while, and I just walked away. And Shawnee said, we can't do that. So he just moved over. And as we would have expected, as the game went on, we got a more than even share of the penalties.
So the referee heard your conversation with Sean?
Yes, he did. Yeah.
And that created huge headlines at the time, didn't it?
Yes.
And you're back in the papers again.
Oh, terrible.
Yeah.
I just remembered something that you'd asked me before about running on the field. And being in the papers, but there was one time there, the Telegram clocked me as being on the field, minute by minute, mind you. And I was on the field for 38 minutes of the game. And along the way, I got that many fines. Poor old Gussie used to look after him, but I used to get $10,000 fines and $5,000 fines and that sort of thing.
Gus had you down as missing 3 tackles one
day.
He did.
Yeah. He did. Yep.
Yeah. Mate, you worked as strength and conditioner for the New South Wales Blues.
Mm-hmm.
You would have been on deck the day the boys went horse riding in the Blue Mountains.
I certainly was.
Did you ride that day?
I did ride that day.
Tell us about that, mate.
Unfortunately, we went to a horse riding thing which was fraught with danger. And the people running the show said, those who think they can ride a horse, go that way. Those who think they can't, go this way. So I thought, I don't want to go on that. I don't want to with the little putters.
Yeah.
I'll go with the mob.
The fast horses.
So it was Terry Hill, Fletch, Freddie, all the Cowboys were over this group. So what we did, they went wide, the other mob went that way. So as horses probably, as you know, with the horses, when they're coming back home, they smell home and they go for it. So what happened was the little chit were coming up the straight to go home to the stalls, and our gang come from behind them. And of course, the larrikins were out on board and going, yeah. And all the horses have just taken off.
Yeah.
And we were supposed to go up this hill. And so I got to the top of the hill. I'm not a good rider, but I just held on for dear life because these horses just took off. I got to the top of the hill, and all of a sudden, 1, 2, 3 horses come without a rider.
Wow.
I thought, oh, this ain't good. So I've gone back down the hill. And Bradley Clyde is spasming on the ground. He's, poor bugger, he was such a big bugger, as you know. He's put his stirrup down to hang on. And as he did, it snapped and he fell down, hit his head on the ground. And
Robbie Kearns.
Robbie Kearns, he was the other one. He actually just fell up and crunched his shoulder, and I went up and felt it. And as I felt his collarbone, poor old Junior Pearce was looking at me. I felt his collarbone, it was all mushy, and I thought, ain't good.
Because they'd taken the boys out there because there'd been previous indiscretions in previous camps. They said, we're going to be nice and clean this camp and behave ourselves.
Yep.
Page 1, boys falling off horses left, right and centre.
And I felt so for Junior because his intentions were unbelievably good.
Yeah.
And it was such a great day. It would have been, but you know, some accidents happen.
How'd you go in the series that year? Do you remember?
We won, I think. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Tell us about the famous chair stealing. Laurie Daly on the sideline, you and Phil Gould pinching his chair. And
you know what? To this day, I still don't know if it was my fault,
Right.
but it appears that it
You'd
was
need
Gus.
to watch the replay, wouldn't you?
But it appears it's Gus's fault because Gus wasn't down the sideline, or was he?
Yeah, he was on the sideline.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
So I've obviously sat in Loz's chair, and he's because I've come back, listened to Gus what he wanted because I was sitting next to Gus, sat down, and poor old Loz is trying to find a way, and you could see him just trying to jockey around, and that poor bugger couldn't get a seat. So.
What about the famous people you may have met along the way? Have you run into anyone famous that you can share with us?
Probably, oh yeah, lots, but not that I'm, a star.
Did you meet Kerry Packer?
I did indeed,
Right.
yes. We went to Elliston at Scone, and he invited, through Gus, he invited us up to there to all and do some training and spend a couple of days up there, like a mini camp. And they turned over a polo field and set up like a footy field for us. And everything was, it was a really, really good thing for us to do. We met all the Argentinian polo players and who go there and stay and practice their polo. And we went to have dinner that night, and there was like a bistro there on the property, and he had the big movie theatre next door and all that sort of thing. But in the bistro, Gus was sitting at the bar with Kerry Packer, and we're around the surrounds, all of us having a few beers and doing our bit. And Gus said, "Hey, Ron, you got a minute?" I said, "Yes, I have," because he's talking to Kerry Packer. But I've gone over, and he said, Kerry Packer, he said, "Tell Kerry what you told me about Muhammad Ali in reaction time," because as you know, Kerry was a mad sports nut.
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, Kerry, what happens is Muhammad Ali had a reaction time of 0.06, but the normal reaction time is 0.12. So he could go out and back before you could get your hands up." And after that, we sat and talked boxing, footy. So I spent probably half an hour with the great man. Yeah.
Wow. So you would have known James Packer?
Yeah, he was with us in the early days when
Yeah.
he came away to Nelson Bay and a couple of other places with us. Yeah.
Right. What about any international stars? Have you ever come across anyone famous from overseas?
When we were sharing, I was with the Tongan team because I was with them for 10 years, as you know. We were at someplace in Manchester, and Arsenal were there, and I ended up linking up with that Wegner. What's his name? The coach there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
What about movie stars? Have you ever met any movie stars?
Oh, there's been a few. Yeah, only because they come over to ES Marksville.
Right.
Chris Reeves, the old Superman.
Christopher Reeves, yeah.
Yeah, he come, but he unfortunately was in his wheelchair at the time.
Right.
But he come over, we met him, and he was a lovely fellow.
Yeah, right.
And that's about it, mate.
So you worked for a few clubs. You haven't, you didn't do the Roosters entirely throughout your career. You've moved around a bit.
Yep.
Some of the other clubs you've worked at.
I went from the Roosters, mate. I was 24 years there, and then I went up to the Titans with John Cartwright. Did 2 years there, my old mate Jonathan.
And you got to know John via the Roosters. He
Yeah.
would have been there with Ricky.
Yeah. We had a gang there, mate. We
Yeah.
had, if you talk about the coaches there at that time, in and around a couple of years, there was obviously Ricky. There was Cardi. There was Cement. There was Jimmy Dimmick. There was Flano.
Yeah.
And Ivan, too, was an assistant coach there as well. So most of those blokes branched off and had their own teams.
So your relationship with Cardi then may have helped springboard you to a job with him?
Oh, yeah, because I was out of a job. Things changed. Freddie was coach and I was trainer in 2009. We both got moved on. And I needed a job, and John was a rescue package for me then. I went up the Gold Coast, had 2 fabulous years up there.
Are trainers sometimes a sacrificial lamb if a club struggles?
Probably not as much as the coach, but I think that often that can happen, but not as often as coaches. The axe usually falls with the coach.
So after the Titans, mate?
Yeah, after the Titans, and that was a funny thing there, mate, because I went up there, and the first year we were one off the grand final. It was an enormous year. But anyway, then I went on to, Ivan invited me to go to Penrith.
And your relationship with Ivan would have begun at the Roosters?
Yeah, well, I'd actually trained him as a player at the Roosters, and then he come back as a coach at the Roosters. So this would be my third sort of gig with him. And we were part of Yassi's 5-year plan at Penrith. So he was coach, and he asked me to come and do the training for him. So we had 5 good years, or he had 4 and had to take a rest. And he went over to the Tigers in the interim. I was sort of on the treadmill, and I had 1 year at Parramatta with Brad Arthur, which was fabulous. We were one off the grand final that year.
Yeah.
And then I went to the Tigers and spent 6 years there. 2 under Ivan and 3 under Madge.
So Ivan goes from the Tigers back to Penrith, who are now a power club. You're as good as you get.
Yep.
Was there ever a chance you could have gone with him?
Yes, there was, which is, you know how you get these sliding door moments in life, and I have very few regrets, but the one regret was, I think it was in Ivan's 3rd year when they first won the competition, when he went back there. He asked me to come halfway through the year and join him. And I was with the Tigers. We were going all that flash. So I said, I can't join you, mate. And I said, I've been in this game for 40 years and, you know,
Loyalty factor.
Yeah. I just can't do it. You know, I think that integrity is more important than most things, and loyalty, which doesn't always help you, but anyway, loyalty. So I didn't go. And long story short, they won 4 premierships after that. So
It would have been nice, wouldn't it?
It would have been.
And then, ironically, your stint at the Tigers came to an end at the end of 23.
Yep.
When you were let go by the club.
Mm-hmm.
How tough was that for you?
Yeah, it was tough because I was, as I said to you, I've been involved since 1971. Just turning up and working with a team, which is great. You know, it's better than a real job, and it was just something that I'd done all my life.
So your role as head strength and conditioner ends at the end of 23. You obviously want to keep going because you're passionate about it and live for it. What sort of opportunities may or may not have presented themselves at the end of that season?
Yeah, not a lot at all. The thing is with any of the NRL clubs, No, nothing's come my way. But I've had to find other things to do, so I'm doing some personal training and training a couple of people at a school. But I think that, there comes a realisation that maybe your time's up. But I'm not thinking it's up yet.
So what's the school stuff like? You're at Trinity?
Yeah, I'm doing 3 mornings a week, early start, 6:30, and training the staff there.
Train the teachers?
Yeah.
So they come in early to do a session with Ronnie
They come
Palmer?
in early, yeah, they come in early. We do a Monday, Wednesday weights, and we do a Friday boxing session. And I also fill in a couple of sessions in the afternoon if some of the teachers are absent or they need help with something.
And do you share Ronnie Palmer stories with them throughout the sessions?
Not those people.
And what are they like? They all shapes and sizes?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, they are.
And what's their feedback like? What do they think of you as a trainer?
I haven't asked them. No, they seem to enjoy it, and they come back and get on board every day. So there's usually about a dozen doing it, which is good.
So the fire's still burning in Ronnie Palmer.
I hope so, yeah.
So would you like to get back into it?
Look, I realise the limitations, as I said, as you're getting older, things change. And, yes, the answer is yes.
But you've got more than just the knowledge and the skill of a strength and conditioner. You've got 50-odd years of experience in clubland,
yep,
which is invaluable. Surely there'd be some kind of role in some sort of club where you can share your knowledge and experience and be a value add to that club.
Yeah, I certainly agree with you, but it's just a matter of, I guess, them finding a role that would, because you just can't throw a bloke in there for any reason. There's got to be a specific purpose to it.
What was your relationship like with the great Arthur Beetson?
Yeah, he was the best, mate. As we all probably know, he was larger than life. Anywhere we ever went, everyone loved Arthur, and he loved everyone. He had time for everybody. Just to,
So did you play cards with him?
No, never played cards with him, but I know that was his forte. Yeah,
Have a drink with him?
I had a few drinks with him.
Yeah. What about characters like Brian Fletcher, who you spent a lot of time with at the Roosters? How many Brian Fletcher stories would you have?
Not too many, but Fletcher was quite the character, as you know, mate.
Yeah.
He's he was going to be on TV before he knew it. I remember we were away on an end of season trip, and somebody accidentally put their foot through the wall, and the plaster was a bit, how you going, knocked through. So Fletcher decides to do an ad, and he says, and this is how we repair it. And we're all watching, and he gets the water and puts the thing back in place, gets some newspaper, and papers over it. But that's typical of what Fletcher was always on the ball, ready to do something.
Plenty of character about him. What about, you mentioned your grand final win is your greatest moment. Are there any other moments that you treasure over the years?
Look, you know what? Being in the Origin circuit for so long, I was lucky enough to be there for 24 years, and there were some amazing times there. I think the number one time was when, I think it was 96, when Gus was coaching, and we won 3 in a row, and we had the same 17 players, which has never been done and never will be done because of injury and suspension and all that sort of stuff. So
Gus was a great storyteller, wasn't he?
Enormous storyteller. And I got to say, after that series, he actually gave me the ring that he was presented, which is really quite touching from old Gussie.
And you've still got it, I hope, Ronnie?
I still got it.
Yeah. What about regrets? Is there anything where you look back and said, I could have done that better, or I let that bloke down, or I've made a mess of that in your career? Anything at all?
So personally, in letting people down, I don't think so, because I tried my hardest not to let anybody down. But I think the only time I felt I let myself down is when I didn't take the opportunity to go with Ivan. But other than that, there's been a few sliding door moments where I probably I've pulled the wrong rein, but most of the time I've got no real regrets.
Did you ever think when you were sitting in the dungeon at East Leagues back in '87 that you'd take that job and it would take you on this incredible journey?
Not in a million years. And the funny part about it is I was lucky enough, I things just evolved for me. I just sort of felt like I was taken on a journey, and the journey kept going because I never applied for things. I just sort of drifted into the next job, into the next job, into the next job, which took me to the New South Wales job, which took me to be with the Tongans for 10 years, which took me to be the Australian team. And none of those I applied for. I just sort of evolved. It was good.
Fantastic. Now, Ronnie, you're an entertainer.
Oh, am I?
Yeah, and a great storyteller and a very accomplished joke teller.
Mm.
And I was wondering if you'd be kind enough to take us out with a joke today.
Yeah,
Have you got anything you can share?
It's pretty hard to tell clean jokes these days. But I do have one. Let's see how it goes.
Okay.
In the old days of the Wild West, there's not Fort Apache, but it could have been, out in the middle of the desert. And all the soldiers are there. There's a bloke up on the lookout. And the captain is down below and he says, "Soldier," he said, "there's Indians around here. I want you to let me know when you sight an Indian." He said, "Right, sir." So he gets his telescope out and he's there. And about an hour later, he said, "Captain, Indian on the horizon." He said, "Good. Get back to me in an hour and let me know if you can still see him." Hour goes by and he goes, "Captain, on the horizon." "Captain, Indian on the horizon. How big is he?" He said, "He's about that big." "All right." And the captain says, "Let me know another hour." Another hour. "Captain, Indian on the horizon. How big is he?" "He's about that big." And this goes on for a couple of times. He goes from this big to that big to that big to that big. He said, "Right." He said, "Soldier, when you see the Indian and you can see the whites of his eyes, I want you to put a bullet through his head." And he said, "Okay." So he says, "Captain, Indian, very close. I can see the whites of his eyes." He said, "Put a bullet through his head." He said, "I can't." He said, "Why not?" He said, "Because I've known him since he was this big."
Oh, well done, Ronnie.
I stuffed it up a bit along the
No,
way.
it was excellent. Mate, thank you for sharing your story with us today. Good luck with the future. And thanks for your contribution to the game. Thank you very much for chiming in today, Ron Palmer.
Thank you, Chimes. It was a pleasure.
Thanks,
you.
mate.